It is time for the fourth presentation today by Mercedes Bravo Rebolledo. Thank you. And she will talk about project-based learning in the English language class.
Thank you. I think you can all hear me. So I'm going to put you to work right away. And each one of you are going to get a present from me. You're going to get 2 sticky notes. And they're special sticky notes where you have a lot of space to write. So there you go. So everybody gets 2 sticky notes. Maybe you can pass it on. So you might have noticed that there are some prompts on the tables, questions actually. So one here, there are 7 in all. So what you're going to do is you're going to pair up with somebody and you're going to have to choose 2 questions that you're going to answer to, okay, with the sticky notes. So pair up, but each one of you chooses 2 questions, so you'll have to walk around. So normally I would stick these on the walls and you would have to walk around and look at them and then stick the sticky notes on the walls, but I didn't do that here because I didn't know if they would allow me to stick things on the walls. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Here, look, you have to walk around. The questions are here. There's one question here, there. But first walk around, have a look at all the questions and look at those that inspire you most. And I insist they should inspire you because you'll have to work on them afterwards again. So it would be nice if all questions were answered. I'm just saying that.
Answering as individuals?
Yes. All right, so when you're done, it doesn't matter if you have answered just one question, as long as you have given your opinion at least on one subject and if you have read all the questions. So now what I want you to do is to pair up. And you get another sticky note. This one, it's pink. So you can just do it in 3s if you like, or yeah, pair up. And you are going to answer one of your colleagues' answers, okay? And say whether you agree or not. If you agree, you say why you agree. If you disagree, you say why you disagree, okay? No, you can just go and read what they had to say. You put it on their answer, obviously. I agree because blah, 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 okay? So pair up. It's nicer if you pair up. Yeah. You walk around with your friend and you read, with your partner, and you choose one of the answers and you say why you agree or why you disagree with what has been written. One, just one. Whatever question. No, don't be so... Yeah, very scientific. Who are you with? You're together, yes. All right. Yeah. All right, so I think we should wrap this up because this was just a little warming up, okay? You'll have plenty of time to discuss afterwards. I have just a little bit of talking to do, and then you can move on and be creative, or at least I hope you will be. All right, so thank you very much. Thank you for being here. I thought I would start by giving you a little taste of what my classroom is like most of the time. So it's kind of messy, it's people walking around, so that's what happened. Normally this is a quick activity. This took a bit longer than I expected, but yeah, you know, you're teachers, not students, so that might be the difference. And this is a kind of warming up activity, so most of the time I would start with something like that, okay? So while I'm at thanking, a huge thank to Xamp for putting this whole event together, okay? I feel like it's a fantastic opportunity to meet you all, and I have so many ideas already. And yeah, thank you very much. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about me, not too much, don't worry, but I think it's actually important to kind of explain who I am as a teacher, okay? So, my name is Mercedes Bravo Rebolledo, or Mercedes, if you prefer, right? So, you're going to say, that name sounds very Dutch. Well, no, it doesn't, not at all, right? Well, actually, I am Dutch, right? All of my cousins are actually blonde giants, and they speak English like this, okay? But I am not fully Dutch, okay? I'm also half Chilean, which explains maybe a lot, okay? And my name, first and foremost. So I'm not here to talk to you about how it is to have a dual heritage or a mixed identity or all these kinds of topics, although they are very interesting in themselves. But what this means is that I grew up in a household where people were trying to communicate using each other's language with varying degrees of proficiency, should I say. And sometimes they wouldn't communicate at all, which is maybe why my parents divorced, but that's another story altogether, all right? But what it means is that, yeah, we were talking in a mix of Spanish, Dutch, and oftentimes English would come into the mix as well. And that's something that stuck with me, both personally and as a teacher. And when I was a teenager, my mother, for some kind of reason, decided to move to France. And that was a real eye-opener, because it turned out that nobody in France wants to speak English. Maybe some of them do, but in secret. So, I mean, nobody, not in the administration, not at the school, not the teachers, not the students. Well, almost nobody. Actually, I had a friend who came from Bristol, and she also became an English teacher, so that's another story. So the experience taught me actually two things. First of all, that there was a real hesitancy, maybe even a fear, around speaking English in France. And a second thing was that my teachers were weirdly obsessed with some grammar tools, like irregular verbs. Because for some kind of reason in France, and that's even true today, all 12-year-olds need to learn a list of irregular verbs. And I still don't know why. So you might say, oh, it's because it's part of the syllabus. Well, it isn't. Or at least it hasn't been ever since I became a teacher, and I started my teacher training like 12 years ago. So no, there was nothing like that, but still. So you can try that if you want, okay? You can quiz French people on their irregular verbs, and they'll probably nail it. But ask them to use them in context, non merci. So, yeah. When I decided to become a teacher, English just felt right. Actually, I had been majoring in philosophy, so nothing to do with English, but I felt like I would be a good English teacher. Also because before actually moving back to France, I spent 3 years in India, where I acquired another type of English, right? And especially because I had to communicate with my in-laws, and you know, that was a whole different experience of communicating in English, all right? So, I went into teaching, and that's the wrong keyboard, okay, with all that. And I thought that my students would just adore me. Because why wouldn't they, right? I'm a very interesting person, as I've just explained. Well, I quickly realized that actually it wasn't about me at all. It was about them, all right? And it was about figuring who they were as learners. and to focus on what they actually needed, because it turned out that they were not at all interested in me, as I thought it would be. Anyway, they were quite different. They were quite different, depending on where I was teaching. So in 2015, I started in a middle school. So you have to imagine a very diverse group of kids, but they came from a very rural area in France, and some of them were facing real socioeconomic challenges, and they didn't give two hoots about English, right? They were figuring other things out. Some of them were eager to learn or eager to please me, but most of them were very hesitant, and my job was to make English somehow relevant and engaging to them, okay? To show them that it was more than an irregular verb list, and that maybe even it could be a tool that they could use for something. And I had to create a situation in which they could actually use it. Then, fast forward to 2018, I started teaching alongside being a middle school teacher, because I've been a middle school teacher for 10 years, actually. I started teaching at the Institute of Technology. So this was the first time that I was teaching to older students, okay? And these students were very typical as well. They were very focused. They had one goal in mind, and that was a short path to employment, okay? And they needed practical English skills, okay? And very much oriented towards their field of interest, okay? So you have to think about technical vocabulary, communication for a specific industry, resume, interview prep, all these kind of things, right? And then came 2024, and that's where I'm now. I teach at the Institute of Business Administration at the University of Rouen. And that's a completely different vibe again, because I have students, most of whom have really solid academic records, and they are all aiming for careers as managers of some sort, okay? And so they need tools to succeed in the corporate world, if you will. Anyway, so each of these groups of students has taught me something new, and each context has required a different approach, okay? A different set of tools that I would put in my teacher toolbox, if you will. But the core principle, according to me, remains the same: understanding who they are, what their goals are, and making English work for them, basically. So what I mean to say is that, according to me, in my EFL classroom, English isn't the subject itself. It is a tool for learning, all right? I prioritize using English to explore content, right? Complete tasks and build students' confidence in their ability to communicate, basically. So this approach will shift the focus from memorization and grammatical perfection to practical application and, I guess, real-world relevance, right? So one of the things that's been an incredible tool for me is project-based learning, which is why I called it project-based learning a love story, because that's really what happened to me. So I really think that you don't learn much by just passively listening to someone talk, which you're doing right now, and I might not be teaching you anything at all. So PBL is the opposite of that. It's learning by doing. So there's some great research backing that up. We're not going to get into that. But I think it is interesting because you actually get to motivate students by working on things that actually matter to them. And you can involve teamwork, which also builds essential communication and collaboration skills. And the best part for most of my students is that you get to show off what you've learned, because you always end up with a final product or presentation, something that's real and tangible and that you can be proud of. Okay? I know it all sounds very childish, but let me remind you that I am, first and foremost, a middle school teacher, and I'm proud of it. So I think that as a teacher, the most important thing is to keep things real and relatable to your students. And honesty is the key, especially if you teach younger students or teenagers, right? They always know whether you're honest or not. If you know something or not, you should never pretend that you know something that you don't, actually. They will know it. All right, so there are a lot of different strategies that I try to learn. So think, pair, share, jigsaw activities, debates, role-playing, you name it, okay? I'll always try to make my students collaborate. So my PBL approach boils down to 3 main things, I would say. First, design meaningful projects. As I said, I try to connect projects to real-world issues, especially those that are relevant to what my students are studying. This makes learning more engaging, I suppose, and it shows them why it matters, why they're actually learning something in English. And I also try to make sure that the learning goals and how they'll be assessed are crystal clear from the start, okay? And we'll get back to that. And super important, the more I've been teaching, the more I've been trying to get my students to get a say into what they work on. So give them a choice and an ownership of what we work on, how we assess it. And that's actually quite difficult to do, you know, to always take a step backward and to accept that they can actually, you know, take the lead on most of the projects. So the second step, I would say, is that I try to be a facilitator, not a dictator on the, or the sage on the stage, like you said yesterday. So I see myself more as a guide and a mentor, helping my students through the project process and giving them access to resources. But I'm very much aware that there are actually resources that are much more valuable than I would ever be as a resource. So let's say I see myself as a resource to other resources. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. So I also try to create a real supportive environment. So that means making sure that they have access to the resources they need to complete the projects that I ask of them. But also I try to provide them with regular feedback, not just at the end of the project, but throughout the whole process. And so they can keep on improving and learning along the way. Okay, so what I want to share with you are 2, so these are some of the thumbnails of my projects. I like nice looking projects. And we do a lot of games as well, digital escapes and those kind of things. So I always try to have the same kind of structure, warming up activity, some boring stuff, then a brain break, and then project. That's how I work most of the time. So I wanted to present to you actually a syllabus that is a curriculum for my 3rd year Bachelor of Business Management students. That's very serious stuff. Okay, so my goal in designing the program was to equip them with skills to talk about the subject that they had already been studying the 2 first year, because these are 3rd year students, right? But also enhance their English language proficiency in the meantime. Okay, so it's like, it's not a typical language course, it's more like integrated in the topic, if you will. So the first term, we would do very short projects. So basically every session was a short project, okay? And they aimed at solidifying the core management principles that the students had been learning throughout their degree program, okay? So these include projects like role-play simulations, a museum project, business plans, podcasting, all kinds of things, basically. And the assessment strategy in this first term is designed to be formative because they get feedback on every small project that they do. They are prepared for the larger, more comprehensive project that they do in the second term, okay? So in the second term, actually, they get the choice to work on one project. So they have like a choice board. And this year, both of my groups, because I have 2 groups, they chose to do event planning. They all want to become event planners for some kind of reason, okay? So this was a bit different because it's a project that is structured around an entire life cycle of a project instead of being small-scale projects. And I guess that the assessment is more summative because they will be assessed 2 times, once on a pitch. They pitch their project somewhere in the middle of their project, and then at the end they have to produce a professional portfolio. All right? So, yeah, I really think that this works because, you know, I really try to build both terms logically, like the first term would bring on the second term. And here is an example of a rubric that I've used to assess my students. And I'm showing you this because actually this is a rubric that I didn't create, they created it. So as I was saying, I'm trying to be very iterative and formative. So at the beginning, I will provide them with a rubric that's ready-made. So on the first project, which was the museum project, the Museum of Management Theories, which was actually pretty fun. They did a lot of things with AI, for instance. And so they had a ready-made rubric. And then the next projects, they actually start getting their say in the criteria. So actually, these are not necessarily the criteria that I had in mind. They're always more or less because actually they know what I'm expecting. That's another thing, you know. Always make them feel like they have the agency when actually you have already thought what they are going to do, etc., etc. But, you know, I think it really works. And the thing is, they could choose. They had 7 projects. They could choose which projects they wanted to be graded on. So they need to be graded twice. And actually, most of them completed all the projects, and I just picked the best grades. So they get good grades as well, so everybody is happy. All right, so I'm sorry that I'm doing so much talking. Also, I want to apologize because I'm not really in the best shape right now. I decided to take a tumble and to visit a Finnish hospital. I thought that was a good idea, by the way. Great hospital as well. So anyway, I also wanted to show this. They have online access to all the material. So not only the material that I provide, like my presentations, those nice presentations, they get them. It's a present. They also have all the way that I'm going to assess their projects, etc. They have all the activities, all the steps, etc. I really believe that you should always be transparent in everything you do with your students. And actually, even the younger students, they really are interested in the process. You know, like I would say to 12 years old, like, oh, but we're actually thinking about this big problem. And they would say, ah, madame, quelle est la problématique? You know, they were really happy to be thinking about all these things and to be like visualizing some kind of concept, conceptualizing. So I think it's very important. And also they put their own work on the online course. So everything is included in the online course, is what I wanted to show. Okay, now it's your turn. You have been thinking very seriously, a bit more seriously than I thought you would, about some questions that I asked you at the beginning. Well, I didn't ask them, I just put them on papers and put them on the tables. So, you're going to choose one of the topics. There are 8 topics, right? Things like critical thinking, real-world problems in the classroom, effective strategies for teachers, and you're going to create a poster. And as you were working quite heavily with AI just earlier on and being very ICT-like, we're going to be creative and come back to a good old-fashioned poster and markers. So I've actually collected all the markers I could find in XAMPC. These are all the markers of XAMPC University, and they're all for you. You've got 4 colors. You've got this beautiful sheet of paper, so I think we could do like 6 groups or something. So you choose the topic that you prefer. You have a lot of deep thinking from your colleagues to help you, and you're going to design a poster. And obviously, I'm going to tell you what I expect of you on this poster. I don't know. Is that enough? Exam stuff. No, I need you to work. No, I think it's fine. There are plenty of them. All right, so you're going to tackle the topic that you have chosen, okay? And you're going to have to grab our attention by creating a catchy title. And I'm very particular in that. It should be catchy, it should be fun, it should be a hook, okay? So that's the first thing. Then you're going to choose 2 or 3 strategies that you think work best, okay? You have to imagine this as a kind of mind map, okay? Actually, I'm picking your brains to get better ideas for my teaching, okay? And then for each of these key strategies, you should provide 1 or 2 examples of how you could put it into practice in a classroom. Okay, my classroom or any of your classrooms, which might be very different, okay? So use headings, bullet points, and make it easy for viewers to understand what you want to present, right? I know everything. All right, so get going, and if you need help, I'm available.
Close loop here.
Almost an engineer, yeah.
So let's make the keywords and then the title.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay, I agree. So how about it's gonna be like ingredients for engagements?
okay, if, let's say this is true. We're going to benefit from it. This is true also for how we learn in my mind. I cannot grasp this word. I'm so sorry.
I knew it. I should have waited for that.
Like for social media, if I do social media projects, they can scroll so easily. It's like you need to like dance for attention, you know? You need to grab it.
So when you're done, you can show your magnificent poster to the camera, because we won't have time to do any kind of feedback session. But you can be proud of what you did.
No, I feel like the others were working on Mona Lisa portraits because of that comments.
Oh yeah, the dedication. Oh my God. We have a very intrusive question. Your sense of achievement.
Yeah, obviously, well, we didn't decide on the rubric, but some of you